That was the one. That was our quiz too.
Are we going over stuff after we take the quiz? Like, are we gonna go on to chapter 9? Or is that
If we have the time, if you feel like it, we can do that. We should. Because if you notice, next class, I basically just say on the syllabus, we'll cover the last 4 chapters of the book. Well, part of that is because you get a lot of that stuff in other classes. Especially if you take science courses and things. But you bought the book, so we should discuss all that stuff.
I rented it for like 12 bucks.
Yeah.
Actually.
I rent everything.
This book, I rented it.
For $12.
I don't know, I let my dad do that stuff.
I had the weirdest dream this morning, you know, as you're like waking up and stuff.
Uh-huh.
What I dreamt was that I was kind of like Mario in one of those games, you know, where he's like hopping around. But I was
like the only game.
I was hopping around in what looked like a warehouse full of boxes, all unevenly stacked, so you could like, you know, bounce around them and everything. But there was no ceiling or roof to the building, and so all these boxes had been like just stacked there out in the open air, so you could tell that they had been getting wet, and they were, you know, so the boxes were kind of getting ruined. And at one point, as I'm hopping around, I just looked to see what was in one of the boxes, and it turned out to be stereo LPs of classical music, and you could tell that the water had kind of warped all the paper covers, but it looked like the records were okay. And I was thinking, gosh, you know, I ought to take this one home and play it to see if it's okay. And it wasn't like I was stealing from anyone, because it was like this is an abandoned warehouse or something. And so I started looking at these records, and I think, boy, this would be a good one. This would be, you know, why are these here? You know, I ought to take these home and protect them rather than leave them, you know, to rot in this place. And then I noticed on the sides there were shelves of books, and those were out of the rain, so they were okay, but they were still like somebody just threw these books out. And I went over to look and see what kind of books they were, and I took one off, and it was on Hegel. And I started looking at it, and I saw my notes in it, and I realized this was all my stuff. And so I kind of had this image of this is the future of all the possessions I have that I think highly of, is that someday they're going to be just abandoned in an abandoned warehouse to rot. And boy, that was depressing. In the future, no one will care about this stuff. It's like, well, that's depressing, because you know, you think one of the main reasons, well, heck, that you teach or that you even share your thoughts about all this stuff is because you want people to be interested in it and pass it on and stuff. Boy, if it's all just going to end up in a warehouse rotting away, that's pretty depressing. Of course, as I actually woke up and I was thinking about the implications of the dream, and I have read Freud on dreams, so it's pretty weird. But obviously, by the way, notice no sexual connotation in this whole dream. It's, you know, just totally, you know, none of that. But in any case, it made me think that part of the issue is people don't buy plastic vinyl LPs anymore. I know that's actually coming back as kind of a niche thing, but for the most part, people, how do you get your music now? Just on the internet? Just stream it. Yeah, nobody goes out and buys LPs or even CDs or any of that stuff, right?
It's too expensive to make them anymore.
Yeah.
If you go get a record pressing and stuff like that, get a press like from a manufacturer, it's tens of thousands of dollars just for like a test pressing. So it's, a lot of people aren't doing it unless they're major labels. They got a lot of money behind them.
Yeah. Oh, there's not a market out there.
But it sounds better. Vinyl definitely sounds better.
I remember thinking when CDs came out that they sounded better, but I know the explanation is there's actually less sound, or whatever, the nuances are not there. But I, of course, always remember the LPs having that drag sound that you always heard along with the music. So that was the nice thing about CDs, is that was gone. That was gone. Well, so that was weird. I don't know why I brought that up. It was just one of those weird things. I don't know if you have dreams while you're waking up, and if you remember them at all.
Please don't.
At least I never have to dream about Voldemort. That's pretty weird. How many of you read the Harry Potter books when you were kids? One person? One person?
Never
Watched the
seen Harry
movies.
Potter. Never read it.
Never
Some
read
people
it,
know
never
it's
saw
about.
it. Deprived
I
person.
know. Never watched Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's a little bit different.
Never watched princess movies as a kid either.
When I was
So-
a kid, they didn't have those.
They didn't have them. They didn't have those.
Not that many times they have now.
Oh, we had Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, all that stuff. Okay, well, so let's talk about the quiz question that was the last one, last class, page 412. It says, translate the following arguments into symbolic form. Second, use the 8 implication rules to derive the conclusion of each. And use the letters for the simple statements provided in parentheses. I got a few emails from folks that was a problem for them, how to do that. And I think that's true. There's going to be an issue for that. This is kind of an art in a sense. So it's not going to be a matter of there's one correct way of doing this. It'd almost be like I love the whole issue of translations in general, just from one language to another, or even, if I ask you to give me your interpretation of my dream, what would it be? Anybody feel like giving an interpretation of the dream?
You're stressed about
Animan,
what you're
we want
belonging.
to try? No? No dream interpretation? But it wouldn't be exactly the same thing. You wouldn't just repeat what I said. You would give me something
Yeah,
else.
you're worried about what might be happening to your books and some of the papers you've
Yeah.
got, your precious vinyl records.
Well, for one thing, they might be precious to me in an emotional sense, to my attachment to it. But if you go on Amazon and look up the prices of all those things, now they're zip. Amazon will send you this stuff and pay you to take it from it. It's just about that. I noticed that the kind of books I like are so cheap. They're like a penny plus postage, which actually works out to be cheaper than going to the library to get it and just checking it out for a couple weeks, because you got to pay for the gas to drive to the library and back. It usually costs more than the postage for the book to be sent to your house. And then you get to keep it, which is crazy. However, so we've got letters given to us as suggestions for how to do this, P, M, J, S, H, and C. So then we're looking at the statements and trying to figure out, okay, well we want to use one capital letter for a whole statement. So we have, if 3D movies are making large profits. So considering that we'll go if P then Q, that's pretty clear that the part following if, so 3D movies are making large profits, will be a statement that gets a whole letter all by itself, right? So I'll assume these are in sequence, so we'll put if P, right, as the first part of this question, number 3, right? If 3 new movies are making large profits, then movie companies are producing what people want to see, and then the end will have to be another statement, as I interpret it, right? So I've got movie companies are producing what people want to see, and so that'll be N, right? But then the end part is part of this, right? And the movie companies are creating jobs, which would be J. So now you're left to decide, okay, well, you can't leave it like this. This is not a well-formed formula, if you remember how those rules work. So what I would interpret is that this whole part comes after that, or what do you think? Would it be,
I have
would
it
it be,
like this.
I thought it was around the P and M.
That's
Like
a P and
this.
then M.
and J?
Well, I don't have it quite written. Well, it's close.
If 3D movies are making large profits, then movie companies are producing what people want to see, and the movie companies are creating jobs.
It's more like in conjunction,
I
we're
got-
bringing them together.
Yeah, it looks like these two things should go together. But you can see, you being the fluent speaker, listening to this person giving this argument, you're interpreting. You're trying to figure out how that would go. So there's no absolutely right answer, I don't think. But next, either movie ticket sales are going up, and we've got sales, so sales, or is either movie ticket sales are going up, or it is not the case that movie companies are producing what people want to see, and the movie companies are creating jobs. Well, that looks like not the case, M and J. I can already feel like, well, that will be useful in doing the proof, because if I can get this, that will give me not the case M and J, which will give me not P. I'm just guessing where this argument's going to go at this point, right? But movie ticket sales are not going up. Not S. Next statement. If 3D movies are not making large profits, so not the case P, and movie ticket sales are not going up, and not the case S, then Hollywood will start making different kinds of movies. Hollywood. And movie companies will start being more creative. Thus, so we get the conclusion. Hollywood will start making different kinds of movies. That's my interpretation of the translation. But yes, you could argue different ways, but if you figure Barnett has created these probably backwards from proofs he's already done that he sees are relatively easy to do. And so that's one of the reasons why they sound so not really fluent Englishy, if you think of it that way. You never really hear anyone arguing this way, except for, of course, President Trump, who argues always with such superfluous skill. And
Stable genius.
yes, he's a stable genius. Yeah. So we want to get H out of this. I see it here. It's the only place where it comes from. So we have to get this. So we have to get this to get that. And in order to get this, what we need is this. Well, we already have that. We just need not P separately. And we know we can get that because of this. So it's a relatively easy proof once you've done the translation. Since I have not S, that means that I do have not the case M and J, and that's disjunctive syllogism on 2 and 3, right? And number 6, since I have that, I have not P, thanks to modus tollens, 1 and 5. Now I can join 3 and 6 together. Actually, 6 and 3. I want not P and not S. I don't need the parens here. That's just conjunction from 3 and 6. That is the antecedent of this conditional, so I have H and C, modus ponens from 7 and 4. And since I just want H, I can take H out of here, simplification out of 8. And a lot of you did get this. So there was just a couple that had the question. And I think most of the question was really on the translation. This is relatively easy. Do you see how looking at arguments this way shows you that our basic inferences, the 8 inferences we get, and most books have exactly the same inference rules. I'm not sure any has anything different. So basically, something out of this you could think is, well, we're not really as sophisticated as we might think we are. We have just a few logical operators. Out of that, we end up with only a few inferences that are valid, and then based on combining those, that's what gives us the more complex arguments that we see. By the way, if you're listening to someone and their arguments aren't remotely similar to these kinds of inferences, then they're probably not being very logical at all. So that's an important feature of this. This is, in a way, a shorthand way of analyzing foot-long arguments so that you can get an idea whether or not they're good ones or not. And by the way, and once we do the translation, so that you could also then do quantification, because remember, this is a cheap way of looking at the inference rules and replacement rules, because we're not doing quantification, because these statements, if you analyze them with the full power of their English, you realize that they're talking about their A, E, I, O statements. So P matters. What kind of P you actually, what the statement actually is, and that will influence the overall logic of the argument. Once we get to quantification, we will add a few extra rules in order to handle quantification. So it does get more complex which is why all the logic books I've ever seen skip doing quantification theory until you get a handle on the inference rules and the replacement rules. Because they don't want to add the complexity of quantification until you've got these inference rules down, right? So that makes sense. You know, build up. Don't just hit everyone with the intense complexity associated with the reasoning process. Computers can do that. That's fine. In a way, we're kind of free of that today, thanks to the computers. I mean, I suppose the most intense logical exercise any of us does happens around April 15th each year, when we all have to tell Uncle Sam how little money we made, so he can give us back pretty much everything we gave him. Is that about your experience again? Not anymore. Any questions on this so far? It's fun. Okay. So let's go to the exercise that is where the test will come from. It's further in, because this exercise that we were just playing with only used the inference rules, did not use the replacement rules. But remember, we did go through the replacement rules. So we're looking at the exercise that begins on page 436. So it's exercise 8, section 4, right? So the first one, so that's page 436, right? So the first one says you can now use all of the rules of inference, so 8 implication rules, and the 10 replacement rules. I thought there were 12. Depends on how you count some of them, I guess. And provide the justification for each step that you derive. So this is instead of them handing you all of the steps and you figuring out which step they used, this is an opportunity for you to figure out the whole thing. They do give us the first one, of course. So let's do that one. Just to get our feet wet. We have S or not P or R. Premise 2. But not the case S. So therefore, if P, then R. They give us the answer there, but let me see if I can just do it myself. So I want to get if P, then R. We have P here, and we have R here. It's all in one line. These are disjuncts. If you remember, we can move the parentheses. So one of the things I can do with this is take this parenthesis and shift it over to here, so that I would have S or parentheses, not P or R. And that's referred to as association, yes? Which, by the way, I prefer you to abbreviate SSOC. Instead of just this.
Yeah.
Just
makes sense.
so that's just nice. And that's off of 1, 4. Since this is S or this, but we know we do not have S, that means that I do have this. That's disjunctive syllogism from 2 and 3. And if you remember the replacement rule implication, that tells us that we actually have that. Because this, by implication, is the same thing. Is that what they have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that one was easy. Just a couple steps. Didn't hurt my head at all as far as but number 2, not the case P. Second premise. Q or P or R. Therefore, Q or R. You guys having fun? Is this good? If you already know this stuff enough and you'd rather just do the test, let me know. I can tell you the numbers and you can start working on it. But you could do that at any point you feel ready to do the test. Does that make sense?
It's one of the few things I understand, yes. I'm being honest here.
Makes me worry, is it the material or is it the way I expound the material?
Neither.
How can it be neither?
Because
I think for me it's the material.
Because there's a third part of the equation here. It's me.
Oh, okay.
And the,
Well, that explains
and
that.
this and my problem with that is not unique to this course, which tells me it has nothing to do with the course.
Okay.
Logically speaking.
It's the universe.
No, it's me.
Ah. Okay, so I want to get Q or R. And again, I can see Q or R are all in the same line. I'm basically going to just have to shift things around, and I've already got the not P, so it's just a matter of moving things around. So first thing, Q or R.
You can
So
you can say P or R, P or Q, in parentheses or R, because of commutation, and then associate Q and R together after that, right? Or would there be a faster way to do that?
Yes. Well, that's the thing. What's the fastest, easiest way to do this? You can see what we're gonna do. We can do it this way. I'll commute this like that. That's just commutation on 2, right? I just found that. 4. Now I can change, right? So I've got the P sitting out here by itself. I've got Q or R over here, and that's just association.
And then I have Q or R because I already do not have P.
Right. Does everyone see how that works? I have not P.
Okay, so that negates it.
So I have Q or R. And that's just disjunctive syllogism. 1 and 4. Okay, voila.
That makes sense as you do it to me, but I don't see that beforehand at all.
What I would suggest is that practice is what makes that difference, where you begin to foresee where it will go. That's pretty much my thinking about how that works.
Go ahead.
So,
I don't see why step 3 is necessary here if it's or between each of them. Right? Because if it's P or Q or R, why do we need to swap the order of it anyway?
Because you're thinking we could just, we don't have P, so we could just go to Q or R? Is that what you mean?
Put the parentheses around.
I guess why
Just
can't-
rearrange.
Yeah, why can't we rearrange
Do
and
the
do the
association property on
Yeah.
number 3 instead
That's what I was thinking,
of.
there's gotta be a faster way to do it.
Yeah.
But I was just going based off of the rules here, and it's like, okay, well, separate, but maybe there's one that combines the two.
By number 3,
somewhere else.
instead of Q or R, you just do P or R for Q. And
Well,
separate that.
the problem is, the rules are what we have to use. Computers can't ad lib and say, hey, I could skip a rule here.
Not yet. Right.
Not yet, yeah. Once computers start doing that, we're fucked.
I was gonna say, one of the things that I'm doing when I do the proofs is I look at what I have, and then I just start looking at what's been given, or what I need. I look at what I need, and then I look at what's been given to me, and then try to think of how I can get what I need. And then as I'm looking for that, I was like, well, okay, well, let's see if there's a rule that associates with that, and then just I work my way kind of backwards.
Right, right. And especially when the problem gets more complex and you can't see how you can get to the conclusion, you can work backwards.
Yeah.
Go down to the conclusion and say, well, what if I rearrange this way? What does that give me? And then rearrange it, and then rearrange it, and then you go, oh, now I can see a connection, and then you can start coming from the other direction and blend them together.
Right. Well, it's the same way, like simplifying it greatly. It's the same thing like with the maze. If you work your way from the end to the start, you don't have all the different paths trying to separate and deviate you from the path that you're trying to go. So if you're working your way backwards to the start, if you have a complex argument, someone that may potentially be giving you, that's their whole purpose, is to give you all these different deviations, so that way all you see is their argument as opposed to, and then confusing, making it more confusing as opposed to just trying to be able to break their argument.
Well, let's do 3. Move on to 3. Some of these will be repetitious, but so number 3, just one premise, not the case P and P. What's that written? So since we have replacement rules, we know that we could just get rid of one of the P's. It's totally frivolous. But you might be faced with an interesting question. What about the parentheses? Is it legitimate to just go like this?
Yeah. Seems like it to me.
And what's the name of the rule? Equivalence? You have your handy dandy chart out. Cindy, do you have your chart, or do you already rip it out and put it in your purse? You're Cindy. Sorry. I knew Cindy was in the last row. I just didn't remember.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
You're Jacob.
Apology.
Right.
They can?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's tautology.
Can it go that way though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What I'm saying.
All of the replacement rules can go left and right, or right and left.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, this would be tautology here on one. Because we don't need the extra statement there, right? Because I want to get to this here. So, and the next thing I could do,
Question, why wouldn't we have gotten rid of the not P? Is that a dumb question?
why would this not have gone away?
Yeah, why didn't we? do we-
So what I think he's just playing here with the rules, and you know, well, I can't go from this directly to this, because my next step will be to go or Q,
Okay.
and then P then Q, right? Because this is implication, and
The
this
second one was addition.
is addition. And so the question is, how did we go from this to this? Tautology says that if I have P and P, that's equivalent to having P. My puzzle was, in looking at this, was, well, what about the parentheses? But I guess it becomes a non-issue. The main reason the parentheses is there is because he didn't put not P and not P.
Well, wouldn't you use that if you use the De Morgan? You would create that not P, not P.
The Morgan requires another factor.
It doesn't actually affect it, because if I went with De Morgan's first and I ended up with not P or not P, tautology still allows me to end up with not P.
It's easier for
So-
us to do that step, to see it.
Actually, you might have to do this to do it correctly. I don't know what the computer would do in that case. I don't know how to take the parentheses there away. Maybe this is what
Because that would take the parentheses.
he was really trying to get us to do. That could be. I'm just being lazy. Well, you can see that just looking at me. This is sloth, right? My lawn looks the same way. In fact, I like thinking that it's not a lawn, it's a yard. My neighbors have lawns, I have a yard. One of my neighbors actually mowed part of my front lawn for no reason, they just mowed part of it.
Well, there was a reason.
Well, I'm thinking he fell asleep while he was mowing or something.
I figured if you mowed part of yours, then you'd have to mow the rest.
That's where you're wrong.
I'm still out there looking at the, square foot and how many bees are on the clover, which, you need the clover up about this high before the clover is healthy and happy and the bees are all thrilled. You look at their lawns, square foot, not a single bee, because it's just grass.
So yours is, you're bringing back the bees.
I'm taking care of nature.
Makes sense.
That's my excuse. We even have a sign on our yard that says, this is a living habitat. We have all the required things for life, on our little properties. So, yeah, maybe that's the right way to go with that, Cindy. I cheated. Now I feel guilty. How about 4? Did that make sense to you?
Again, it makes sense as we're doing it, but like,
This is 4. Q or R. Ugh, we got a foot-long piece here. Make sure I get it right. Alright.
So that
Yep.
you have
Then S N P and if R then P and L,
vocal enough about that attitude.
therefore P that's the whole thing. Looks like. So we want to get P out of this. There's P here, P here. Have Q or R. So constructive dilemma is going to get us S and P and E and L, or Q, which would it do? 3. So constructive dilemma says we have a conjunction, we have 2 conditional statements, we have the antecedents of both conditional statements, but it's one or the other, which means even though I have both of these, since I only had either Q or R, I don't know which of these I have. So it's S and P or E and L. Notice I do have P on both sides, so if I use distribution, I should be able to rearrange this so that I have P by itself, right? In order to do that, I think what I've got to do is put commute this, so I have P and S. That's just commutation here to clean it up. You might have thought, well, we could skip that step because you're intuiting ahead of time, right? But strictly speaking, you want to be neat and show every step. But now that we've done that, we can take the P, separate it here. So we have P, N, S, or L. And that's distribution. Is that the right rule for that? And so I can just simplify P. Fun? We should tell jokes and stuff. Did you hear about the guy that bought a dog from a blacksmith? As soon as he got the dog home, he made a bolt for the door.
That's fine.
That was good.
That was okay?
It's a solid joke.
It's a what kind of joke?
Solid.
Solid? Solid.
Stuck in a crack.
How many questions are on this?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Just 8?
8. Could add more if you like. Could always do more. Once you get into this, you know, it's you buy magazines at the airport and do the puzzles on the plane. So 5. Not the case Q, then not the case P. Not Q, then not P. If P and R, then S. We do have P, so therefore Q or S. We could. We want to do that. We could get rid of this here. So you end up with if P, then Q, and that's transposition.
Transpositions.
Funny.
Transposition on 1. So we have Q. Modus ponens. 3 and 4. And we could just add S. We could be lazy. I mean, what they might also want us to do is try to figure out how we could get R. And that might puzzle us out for quite a bit because I don't think there's any way for us to get that. So this might be a trap. But if we remember that we could use addition to just go like this, then we're all done. But if you were thinking you needed to go up here and get S from here, that would work if you were needing to have Q and S. Although I still don't see where you would get R, and you need both P and R in order to get S from there. So, this was a trap. This is the right way to get that. Which makes you wonder, well, if somebody really gave you that argument, why would they have done that? Why would they have thrown in a premise that doesn't really help lead to the conclusion?
To distract you?
Could be, could be. Would people do that? Normally when people are trying to argue with you, what are they? Aren't they trying to be as clear as possible? They're trying to be persuasive. So if they're trying to distract you so that you don't see the clarity of their position, that seems to me to be counterproductive. But this is a logic book, and it's just playing with the rules, so that's different. But if I wrote a logic book, I wouldn't do that. That's unfair. However, so 6. Did anybody see him leave the room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was beginning to think you had a time turner or something.
No, not today.
But only one person in here knows what that is anyway. Because you're the only one that, oh, well, you watched that.
No, I watched that movie yesterday.
You watched that movie yesterday?
Yeah.
What, across time?
No, it's like no.
You know, those things come back. Those time turners come back. You heard about the, what's the new book out? The Cursed Child, right? It's an awful book, actually. No, very annoying. I won't like it. So 6. By the way, I'm not a fan of Harry Potter. I've read all of the books 3 or 4 times.
But you don't like.
But you're not a
I've
fan?
watched the movies lots of times. Listened to the audiobooks lots of times. That's really great, by the way. The reader won an award because he does every voice differently. And I don't know how the heck he kept track of all the different sounds, but you could identify the different voices in that. I've actually read more books about the books than there are books.
Who was the reader on the one that you were listening to?
I don't remember. He's the only one. I mean, there's only one set of those, and he won an award for it. He's like world class book. That's what he does.
I've listened to a few audiobooks, and there's a few people that I really enjoy listening to that make the book come to life, as opposed to someone who's just reading it.
It's a whole different art. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. But the main reason I'm interested in all of that is because I was absolutely astounded that a woman could sit there in the coffee shop with her baby and write a book and become a billionaire. That's what was amazing to me. So, and Howard Bloom says it's crap. You're familiar with Harold Bloom, the critic?
Nope.
You can't love everything.
I've got lots of
And then they
his
would be-
books too. Remember, all these books are going to end up someday in a big warehouse with no roof. It's kind of annoying.
We know the authors, but I don't really care too much about the critics. Make our own decisions on what we like and what we don't.
Well, so we didn't do 6. We're doing 6. P, then Q, R, N, S, then P. We do have R, so therefore it's S, then Q. We're trying to get if S, then Q. Here's S, here's Q. There is a connection because if we have R and S, then we have P, and if we have P, then we have Q.
So R and S, then Q
Or
for
exportation.
hypothetical syllogism.
Exportation to get this out of here.
Yeah, you get
So we have if R, then if S,
then P,
then P. Right?
exportation.
That's number 2. And we do have R. So we have if S, then P.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah. And that's modus ponens. And since if P then Q, if S then P, we can go to if S then Q. That's hypothetical syllogism of 1 and 5. No, Sherry said expertise. I need to take the lid off of my tea because it's not cooling off.
Is it Yeti?
It's a Yeti.
It's the cup of Yeti. It's the Yeti cup.
I thought Yetis lived in the Himalayas.
Yeah. No, not so much.
It's a primula. But yeah, this won't be cool enough to drink until tomorrow sometime. Starting to, yes.
What are the problems for the test?
Aha, okay, so I should write them down. Number 18. What?
I think that's good.
There you go. That's all I can do.
That seems like plenty.
22.
That's a very lot in your little area.
32.
Hmm?
34. 38.
Message from Mark.
They're all even numbers so that if we keep going, I can keep doing odd numbers without worrying about giving you the ones that I have for the test.
None of these have stars on them. I don't like that.
Well, I want you to feel like you're getting your money's worth from the course.
The taxpayers' money
Not for everyone.
for me.
So, do you need paper?
You take all the evenings, I'll mail you on.
Do you have paper?
Oh, no, yeah.
Evie, you're sweet.
If you want to go to another room too, you could do that, although I don't know which rooms are unoccupied. So I was going to do number 7. Yeah, they do get harder as you go up in the number. Notice I didn't go all the way to the very end because some of the problems eventually get to the point where you need to work on them overnight. For me, they were.
That's starting on page 437.
Right, all of those. That's the same exercise we're in.
Making sure you want to do.
Is everybody working on the test now, or some of you want me to keep working on problem 7? I'll do problem 7.
Thank you.
So I think there should be team leaders. Stick up on the board.
Did I lose my position?
You've been usurped.
You have the,
Good word.
that's in the very back, right?
What?
I've been watching Vikings so much.
Vikings?
Yeah.
Did they use the word usurp?
They do in the History Channel show.
That's cheating. Vikings didn't say the word usurp.
I'm sure they
That's
did.
Latin based, so.
Just right to it.
Usurped is Latin based?
Pardon?
Usurped is Latin based?
Sure. Of course, the Vikings did tune, red
Originated like in India, didn't it?
That was fun.
Or was
I wanna say.
That's,
northern parts of India.
So this one is like,
That's
this
what I
one's
thought.
like that.
But then the Caucasian,
This one's
they
like
said the
completely
Caucasian
black.
race is named after
Here's
Caucasus
that.
in the Republic of Georgia. Which is funny because
We all are
Caucasian
technically.
people are not associated typically with Islam. And are Azerbaijan. And they got a huge Islamic insurgency right now.
Plus, you know, the newest studies on Neanderthals indicate that's where the Caucasian
Can't you just
color
switch
comes from.
S and R?
Really?
And then you get S.
They were Caucasian. The people coming from Africa were not, as they bred with us.
That's how a Caucasian race.
And that's why they're all from up there.
So that makes sense.
But the Vikings were red-haired, Caucasian, freckled individuals from someplace. So there were clearly
No, no, wait,
Neanderthals involved.
Supposedly they were the
We're
first
down
ones.
to like 2% Neanderthals.
Supposedly they were the first ones to be able to digest dairy too. Not dairy, but milk specifically. Or
I've read something about that.
like because it's such a, they lived in such a cooler climate, it didn't turn into yogurt and cheese and stuff the way it would like Mediterranean.
They think that the Neanderthals gradually decreased in numbers because of their inability to use the salt that came from the Mediterranean. When you look at the genes, there are good things and bad things.
Yeah, of course.
So there are differences go from the different hominids. What,
yes,
were the good things.
we have not seen.
It's funny, especially now with gender being such a hot topic. Everybody
Just
says, oh, we're the same, we're the same. No, we are not, There's a reason why I need sunscreen, and this guy,
Need more sun.
but at the same time, weather like this, I thrive because I don't need as much vitamin D from the sun.
But you don't get any vitamin D from the sun here. It's the angle of the sun up here.
It says transfer through so much
So we had it R, and
broken down. Yeah, that
Comes
makes
from
sense.
your diet. So if you're not
So we can
eating
do-
raw fish,
so if we just had R and
you're
N.
not getting vitamin D, so you have to take
Oh my gosh,
vitamin D,
I really
vitamin
use
D,
that, that makes me
which mostly comes from the seas.
Yeah.
R for music species.
Interesting.
How was that?
Everyone in my family takes vitamin D.
Did you actually listen to music?
The doctors persuading us that we need it.
My doctor said, I don't find it helpful.
We also listen to not music.
Not the kind of thing you
It's like more about studying history of music than it is.
Oh, really? Because I think I do think
Sure.
music appreciation.
Not united.
Yeah, I get yes. Yeah, see, they're around pretty interesting.
Why is that music?
Simplification and addition.
You're one of the smart
Well, it
people.
doesn't need to be taken.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
No, like this, like stresses me out because I'm like,
I mean, mine
the last
I was
thing
gonna
I
feel
feel
more around
like
this as then.
You're welcome.
So now it's just
What do you say?
Meeting out around
that.
Yeah, that's what it's philosophical.
Are you okay then?
Oh, yeah.
I have to sleep. As long as everybody is like,
I was great between art and music, but not that art.
all the schedule says lost science class, so I'm like, I don't know what happened. I mean, I kind of.
For line 5?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's 4. I did, yeah.
Yeah.
And now you have S, and all you do, yes. All you need to do
Just six, right?
Yeah. That's, quite how you described it to me initially when you